that work. Otherwise, you become predictable. We'll see if they can do that this week. The likes of K Serato, Drop Art, Safe, and Yuri got much work to do. They'll be, I was almost going to say furious, but I'm really not trying to make that pun. They'll be angry with the lack of performance, lack of presence at that major. So many people rooting for them. I think we used to describe Fallen as having a country on his back, but I do feel like that lands in the laps of Furia at the moment. So again, they need to definitely have a better showing of themselves here than they did at that major. Now, looking over at the OG side, obviously they are missing one of their main players. Dexter requested some time off for personal reasons, and that was granted. So Regali will be taking his place, Hawker.
Yeah, and he's looked promising. He's played a few online matches with OG and had some really good numbers, mostly against some of the weaker teams, but he had a series against Astralis where he did okay for himself, and he is a player who was on the Fnatic Rising, the Fnatic Academy team previously. Then he was playing on Copenhagen Flames, so he's got a bit of pedigree about him in the sort of lower levels of Counter-Strike. This is a chance for him to step up and show what he can do. And then you obviously have players like Flames, good on the aggression. Neofrag, similar aggressive player. They don't have Nexa though, so Nico has been calling for this team, and that means I would expect them to play pretty loose. I know Nico's been here for a while, but again, you've got to stand in. You might just be better off freeing up your players and trying to let them have a good feel for when to open up rounds.
Regali, hailing from Romania, 20 years old. I feel like pressure is a cliche that we go to all too often with teams. Oh, they've got pressure in this situation, they're playing from home, there's pressure and so on. But I think when you're a stand-in for a team, you're, I want to say that young, but who isn't that young these days? You know, 20 to 24. So I think if they get to the land segment playing in front of the crowd, then that'll be an early hurdle to pass, especially on the first map, if they get that far. When that first map, you need to get under your belt. I think once you come back and you're used to it, you've absorbed the environment, then that will be fine. But if they do make it that far, I think that first map will be a pretty key one for him in particular. Of course, you've got the likes of Flames there. He's going to be even more important for the squad. Hopefully, we'll see some Mirage, plenty of Mirage for OG. Question is, can they hold the fort with their stand-in? It's often been a key map for the squad, and I'm sure it's going to be no different today in that respect. So we'll see how that goes. You know, normally I think on paper you would have to read in the vacuum of this match Furia being a favorite with a stand-in, but with how disappointing their run was at the major, are you still confident in thinking they're a favorite for this?
I think it's quite sketchy because honestly, OG always seem to just perform slightly better than I expect. They always seem to have slightly better team play. I think Nico's done a good job at keeping it pretty simple and just saying, you know what, we've got to kind of go for some early round plays, maybe stick together, group up, go for some standard stuff, and it works pretty well. And I also have to point out, Furia's T sides at the major were abysmal. In their first two BO1s, they didn't win a single T round. That was crazy. Like, they struggled so hard on their T side. So that has to change for them. That was really, really rough to see. So I'm hoping Furia have figured something out. But, I mean, you haven't had that much time since the major. I don't know if we're going to see a massive turnaround.
That is an insane stat. 0-0 like a roulette table. You know, the odds are way worse when it's 0-0. And I think that's true if you go 0-0 on T sides in your first two matches at a major as well. Yeah, I guess that was an expensive place to fail in such a catastrophic fashion, but I'm sure that they put in work since then. The question is if it will produce results now or not. I believe the veto is ready. Again, it is best of ones for the first 4 matches today, so let's see where this best of one will land. Now, with a stand-in, do Furia go for a Mirage ban and try and force a different map, or do they let it through and exploit the stand-in? That is the question, which we will soon find out. Ooh. So back and forth we go.
Okay, so Furia were playing a little bit of Ancient. They played it against Monty at the major in a best of one, for example. So they get that out. And like you were suggesting, they do get rid of the Mirage. I think that's a pretty Good decision here. Just OG are very solid on Mirage as a map. They can keep it simple, and they can go ahead and go for those standard plays that everyone knows. So I think that's a good decision. That means we get more down towards some slightly more technical maps towards the end here.
I'm glad Vertigo's gone because I hate it. I just want to say that.
I think Fury banned the overpass. Yeah, that's normally their perma. Get it out. And Inferno.
All right. Always a reasonable, agreeable map for the most part. No one really takes too much issue with Inferno. So Inferno is what it's going to be. Although sometimes we see best of one nukes come out, which I think is always interesting. Maybe not as risky as it may have been in the past. And Mirage is a sensible ban, especially when you've still got Flames on the server. Flames, the recent recipient of one of the finest jars of honey from France I had delivered for him especially. It was, I think, the Red Bull Flick. I was talking to him about honey, and I promised him a jar, which he did receive at the major. So he did get a consolation prize after an early bar for OG. So maybe he'll be extra powered up for this one. It is honestly very, very nice.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope he enjoys it. I think Nico on OG was the one man without the jersey on. I don't know if he lost his luggage or something, because I think even Regali had it on. So hopefully he's all good. Seems like he's got his mouse and keyboard. That's the main thing. Always take that in your carry-on. You got to have that with you if you're a pro. Should be ready to get into this shortly. Which way do you lean here, James? We're saying it's not easy to call. I'm interested what you think.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because obviously having a stand-in doesn't mean you're going to lose. It's not like a guaranteed loss, right? It depends on the player. I think Dexter's quite a significant loss for OG. That much is there to be said. But again, looking at the recent performances from Furia, like if they are to have failures on T sides like they did at the major, then that might balance things out. And again, it's up to I wouldn't expect a repeat of that. I've got to be honest. You know, like sometimes it's our job to present questions to be answered as we bear witness to the proceedings. But I think that, I mean, I would hope that would be a bit of a stretch to be like Furia are gonna poop the bed on their T sides once again. So I can't imagine that will happen. But there are questions there because, as you mentioned, trying different play styles and so on, if they are continuing in that direction today, then maybe they will struggle if they haven't figured things out, or if it's not the right strategy for their opponent, like their opponent isn't as tested as they'd like them to be. So there are variables that we don't know the answers to. There's a chance that Furia might struggle on their T side here, or perhaps that's map dependent. Who knows? We'll see. Well, that we will bear witness to. I guess I full circled on myself there. But we don't know what they're going to bring to the table in that respect, basically.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, I think the issue for Furia at the major is, I look back at the results now, and yes, you had the 2 BO1 losses on the opening day, but sometimes you might just have a bad day initially. The best of ones can sometimes be a bit strange, and you can sometimes take a while to warm into it. And then you get that best of 3 against G2, and I can't really fault you for losing that series there. And even their best of 1 losses. I mean, I think losing against Monty at the time looked bad, but we've seen Monty were a team who did incredible damage at the major. Losing against NIP in a best of 1, I don't think that's a massive issue either. You look at the actual losses, I don't think any of them are that bad there on the Furia side. They did get some maybe tough matchups, you could argue. So I think they should be able to bounce back here, but I really just want to see how OG are going to do with Regalian, because switching the AWPer, especially having an inexperienced AWPer, that can be tough. And I feel like Dexter did a lot on this team in terms of having those flashy moments. I think Dexter's just so good in the clutch as well as an AWPer. He has some unbelievable clutches under his belt. So I'd love to see if Regali gets into those sorts of positions, how he's able to do, because those late round positions are not easy to play.
Yeah, and the T side AWPing before the bomb is planted is always a question mark as well. Takes a player of a particular style. I think certainly on the Brazilian side, they breed plenty of snipers who stylistically are favorable to T side of Inferno sniping. We'll see what Regali will bring to the table once we get into the match. Nice to see these smaller keyboards as well. The full-size keyboards disappearing. This makes me happy, Walker. I don't know what size your keyboard is.
I think mine is a bit of a big boy. I've still got the numpad, so
Oh, you've got the full size.
yeah.
Okay, you're
It is a pain to travel with, though. You're starting to convince me. I never really thought about it.
What do you use the numpad for? Are you an accountant?
No, I don't use the numpad either. That is the thing. It's maybe got some buy-binds on it in CS, and that's about it. And I could rebind those if I really wanted to.
Yeah, 65% is the way forward, which... So I think Flames is using... Do you know what? If I knew he had a full-size keyboard, I may have thought twice about giving him a jar of honey at my own expense. I get those imported from France. Those are not cheap. They're like 18 euros a jar. My honey's serious, but I think it's either 10 kilos or 65%. So 60%, you don't have the arrow keys on the right-hand side, which is a bit tedious. So 65% is where it's at. 65% like keyboards. Balance. You get your page up and page down keys as well, so you can use those for whatever binds you think you need. Yeah, I love the progression we have seen in that respect.